Hi guys, I'm David with Media Unlocked. Today we're going to be talking about LR Timelapse 6. I've been using the LR Timelapse software since version 2 or 3. Now, Gunther does send me out a new license key every year, and so just to let you know, this is not necessarily sponsored. I'm going to give my honest opinion and review and show you guys how to use the software. But I don't pay for it. Now, there is a free version, and I think you get 400 images, and it does have a watermark when you export. And, of course, you're not going to have the same exporting settings that I will here as the pro version. But if you do a lot of time lapses and you want to speed up your workflow and you want more consistency in your images, I would highly suggest it. So we're going to be working off some GoPro RAW images. I do highly suggest that you shoot in RAW whatever camera you're using. For this job, it was 2 10-hour days, so we were shooting every 10 seconds, I believe, for 5 hours at a time. And so the time lapse was not the main aspect of the job for this construction company. So we just used our GoPro instead of one of our professional cameras. Plus, that's just added work if you're shooting RAW with like A7 or A7R3, as well as just keeping up with the lighting changes throughout the video or throughout the time lapse, where the GoPro does a really good job of just kind of giving you that automatic information, right? Giving that, making it much more simpler. So things to talk about before we dive in is like, I'm really big into my folder structures. So as you guys can see, I've labeled it by the day where it was at. It was a farm shoot. And I put in like, if like the time lapses just kind of show you, this was done with our drone right here. So these are the edited versions, right? And I'm going to show you how to create that. And then all the footage is harbored right here under our raw file. But what we're going to do is we're going to go on and open up LR Timelapse. And we're going to go through the process of editing it. And here's the really cool thing. This is so simple, so easy, especially if you're really comfortable with Lightroom. Now, you will need Lightroom. I know there's like an express version of Lightroom, which I've never used. And then I just use Lightroom Classic when I'm using Lightroom. So, all right. So we're going to go find the file right here. So let's see here. Here is the file over here to our left. And so it's going to go through and process these real quick. And so this will take a little bit of time, especially if you're using a RAW format. So we'll just hit OK. And then, so now what it's going to do is it's going to spend some time processing these files. So that'll take a few minutes to go through and process the files. As you can see right here. And then it will make what's called keyframes. So we'll talk a little bit about keyframes. So what are keyframes? Keyframes are what you're going to be editing off of when you're in Lightroom. So for this job, I think I did 15 keyframes originally because I knew I was going to be moving the GoPro, right? I knew the GoPro was being moved as they were working around the pool. So they were putting in like a plaster over the pool. And so we were capturing that to where even at its widest, the GoPro they were going to get out of the shot, right? So we did 10 seconds, every 10 seconds, and it was roughly 5 hours, maybe a little bit more than 5 hours of shooting. And so I would move the GoPro, which also means that there's going to be potential big light changes in between shots. So I wanted more keyframes so I had a little bit more control over how and what I edited with the photos. Less keyframes, say you're shooting something like in the middle of the day, the lighting's not going to change a ton. You're shooting for like an hour every 2 seconds, something like that. You may only need 2 or 3 keyframes to work off of. Where I wanted a larger amount of keyframes for when we put the photos back in Lightroom or back in LR Timelapse, and it would do all the correction. And so mainly it's going to build the color profiles and the smoothness and the consistency through those 15 keyframes, which just really makes it easy so you're not editing every single photo, or you're like copy and pasting batches of photos, right? Now, while this is still processing here, I thought I would talk a little bit about the Holy Grail. You'll probably see that. Let's see if it has the Holy Grail popped up, but there is a Holy Grail option, and there it is, but we don't have it turned on. So what the Holy Grail does is it's really, really cool for people that do a lot of astrophotography, but might want to do sunrises, sunsets, right? So let's just say you start shooting in the middle of the day, and then it gets to sunset. So, your lighting is going to change over time. And then you go into the evening, and then you're shooting all the way through the night, capturing that beautiful astrophotography, and you're coming back to sunrise, and then you're going back to the middle of the day again. So we've got full 24 hours of shooting. You are going to have to make some adjustments on your camera throughout the 24 hours. But what the Holy Grail does is it helps you color correct and get the smoothness and consistency of that 24 hours. So it's going to help you get really good. It's going to help you with editing those sunset into dark, into astro, back into sunrise, back into really bright day. And so that's a really big thing for people that do a lot of landscape photography, a lot of professional photography, where they're going from like a brighter day to night and shooting astro, and they want that nice, smooth consistency all the way around the clock. However, for this, we're shooting 5 hours in the middle of the day under a tarp. And I just knew that, like, and you'll see as I move the GoPro, and let's see if it will let me play a little bit of the video yet. So I'm going to see if I can jump. Yeah, it's still processing. So this is very labor intensive on my computer. I have a Mac M1 Pro or Mac M1X or whatever. So it's the M1 processor. And it does great, but this software is a little labor intensive, so I would highly suggest that if you're doing this, you wouldn't have anything else open or do anything else whatsoever. So anyways, again, it's going through, it's processing right now. This is going to take some time. So I'm going to hop back on with you guys here in a second once this is processed, and we'll show you the next steps in getting it into Lightroom, editing it, and getting back into LR Timelapse, and then doing our full export once it's done everything. Again, this makes doing time lapses so simple. All right, so now that it's completed, you see this blue line right here. We've gone through, it's kind of processed these files, and it will actually put this out here just so you guys can see. It's just going to show you the time lapse, right? So it's going to show you. See, I'm moving the GoPro. Actually, that was moving into the exact shot that I wanted. So I'm able to get as much of this as possible right here. But then as we're moving, I know there's going to be light changes here. And so that's where I need to transition all that. And that's where LR Timelapse and Lightroom work so well together. So we're going to put this back in, and we're going to look at our keyframe wizard. This our Hesker frames, yes, and we're gonna stick with 5. But like I said, I think I did 15 keyframes to really micromanage, get that exact detail of the lighting in between each individual chunk of shots, right? So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna hit save, and so it's gonna go through and save this metadata and information to the files, right? So now we're gonna open up Lightroom Classic, and we're going to import the files into Lightroom. So if you're in Lightroom and you're like and you've just got like a single picture showing, right? And you try to drag and drop, it's not going to work. So what you need to make sure is you're in library. That's the big one. And then we're going to hit this where it sees a gallery, right? And then once it sees the gallery, we're going to drag and drop it in. It's going to see the files. I'm going to do minimal. I'm not going to do one-to-one previews. And I'm not worried about duplicates as I've imported this a few different times. So then we're just going to hit import. And it's going to go through its import process. As it's importing, you can go on and hit right click. And then I go to folder and library. So now we're in the folder right here, as you guys can see. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to go through, and it's still it's pretty much finished processing now, right? So we want to go to our keyframes, which we have 5 keyframes, and I'm not going to do any crazy edit here, okay, just to let you know. So we're going to click on this, and we're going to go to develop, right? And now we're going to start editing, right? So mainly we need to bring this up a little bit, and I've kind of pre-edited these from before. So I've got the highlight way down. We might bring the shadows down, bring the shadows up, but we're just kind of screwing with this, right? We can make it kind of ridiculous. I'm not going to do anything too crazy with it, but I could just hit reset right here, right? And it's going to reset it from brand new. So what we want to do is we'll bring the highlights down, we'll bring the exposure up just a tiny bit, maybe bring the shadows up a little bit. Blacks down, maybe the whites up, and then maybe we want to add in a tiny bit of sharpening. So let's add a little bit of sharpening. See how that looks. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, so once we're here, what we're going to do is we're going to hit shift. I want to say, I actually don't know what the button is on a PC, to be honest, but mainly what you want to do, you want to hold down shift if I'm on a Mac, and then you want to select your next button, and you want to go up here to the top where you see the script, and you're just going to hit this. And so what that's going to do is it's going to copy the information from here to here. As you can see, because we don't have a bunch of keyframes in between, the problem with that is that this is not going to be good enough. Like this edit, like I need to do some edits to this, right? And so that's what you're going to do is minute edits, right? Little adjustments. So like I want to bring probably my shadows up on this to show the guys over here on the right. And then once, let's say I'm happy with that, right? So I'm going to select number 2, then go to 3, and we're pretty much going to just do this down the line. And we're going to keep doing this. Now, if you want, like this is a little bright from that shot, right? So again, that's why I have more keyframes in between. So the control's a little bit better. So I'll bring these down maybe a little bit and then select these 2, right? And then again, we'll go up to this, hit this, and next one. Boom. Okay, so once you've got all that, it's really simple. Just highlight all these. You can hit Command A with a Mac, right click, and all you got to do is save that metadata. So this information from these photos, from what we just edited, when we bring it back into LR Timelapse, it's going to take that information and then it's going to make a good gradual edit on all the photos in between. So you don't have to do every single photo, which is fantastic. Saves a lot of time. So then we're going to open this up, and what we're going to do is all the metadata has been saved. So we're just going to hit auto transition, and you're going to notice that it's going to start putting in all this information, and we're going to have this little line here, purple line. And as the purple line gets further and further, that's the like edited preview you can watch. So you can actually watch kind of you can get an idea of what the edited video is going to look like as a preview, which is fantastic. I absolutely love it. So again, it's going to go through, and this is going to take some time. Once the auto transition is done, we may work with a little bit of the visual deflicker, but you're probably going to see a lot of that if you're shooting landscape or you're going from night to day or day to night, and that holy grail effect. That's where that flicker, you'll see some flicker, and it will go in and kind of smooth that out. So again, this is going to take some time, so I'm going to hop back on once this is completed, and then we'll kind of show you the last few steps and export the file, and then you'll have a completed time-lapse file as a video, which is just fantastic. And we'll look at a few of the settings for the export, especially if you have if you have one of the pro versions, the paid version. And if you don't, you're going to be limited, but you can still play around with this, get some practice, figure out if it's a good fit for you or not. Well, it looks like it is finally finished. So let's take a look at it. Now we've got the visual previews turned on. So we can pop this out, and then you can turn this off if you want, but I'm just going to leave them on for a second. And so what it's doing is showing us kind of what the visual preview would be with the edit, right? And you can kind of see it, see if you like it. It's going to go through the whole process, and then you can technically go back, make any edits that you need to on the images, resave that metadata, and then kind of go through this whole second line of processes again. But I'm happy with it, right? So let's put this back in here. Visual deflicker, I'm just going to leave it what it's at and hit apply. So it's going to go through and try to smooth some of these things out. If you can see where some of the jaggedness is, and it's going to try to help smooth some of that out. So it's not as jagged, and so where it thinks is flicker. Also, it may think there's some flickering due to these tarps and the way that they're moving with the light, right? This was not the most ideal situation for the job, but okay, so there's only a few more things that we got to do, and that's pretty much export and render. So we're going to hit this export and render button. I'm going to select where I would like it to go, so I'm just going to pick the desktop. I'm going to hit OK. Then we're going to look at some of the render settings. So H.264 is where you want to keep it. We'll just do 4K UHD. We could do a little bit higher if we wanted. Then we have some other options down here. Again, most of this is going to be grayed out if you don't have the full version. And then I don't leave, some people want to put sharpening on, but I do that in Lightroom, so I'm going to leave that off. And really, like once you've seen these screens here, all these options, yeah, we're just going to hit export and render. And then it's going to send it to the location on my desktop that I told it to. And you'll see that it is exporting right down here. Now, as you notice, my Mac is my Mac M1X or whatever it is, M1 Max or whatever. You can see that this does take a lot of labor intensive RAM or CPU. So like I'm not going to do anything else whatsoever while this is exporting. If you do get an error code, which will happen from time to time, not very often, just go back through, make sure you like where your render settings are, and then hit it again. It should be fine. But I have had it like halfway through, something happens. You know, probably I was doing something on the computer, like YouTube or something like that, and it just was it was trying to compete with LR Timelapse. But this piece of software is amazing. Of course, we'll add a link at the end for you guys. If you have any questions, leave those messages down below. I'll do my best to answer them. Because while this software is super simple for some people, there may be some of the steps may be a little confusing, and I would love to just answer those for you and help you through it. Because if you do time lapses, both commercially or just for fun, like for yourself, right? This is the best software that I've come across to get your time lapses looking amazing, and just the process for me, it's just so simple. So as always, guys, we'll catch you next time.
Let's go.